did it come about? That's a hard question to answer. One answer would be that Rotary's popular appeal is due to the fact that in Rotary, men are encouraged to be natural, just to be themselves. In this world where artificiality so abounds, it is refreshing to meet with groups who are not worshippers of cold, meaningless formalities. There's a bit of the boy in every man, and friendly, natural intercourse is the best way to bring it out. I wish that it might be your privilege, as it is mine tonight, to look in on this happy throng of big, strong men from Occident and Orient, from the frozen north and from down beneath the equator. Many of them have their wives with them. The faces of all are radiant with smiles as they clasp each other's hands. If you are here, I believe that you would agree with me in my conclusion that the words of the Bard of Air were not the expression of an idle dream, that they were indeed prophetic, and that the finest conception of human mind, the conception of universal goodwill and peace, will in God's good time be realized in very truth. Rotary, in the final analysis, is our way of life, a good, natural, wholesome, friendly way of life. The world is full of potential Rotarians who are not Rotarians in fact. Many of them are listening to me now. If you have the love of your fellow men in your heart, my friends, you are potential Rotarians.
Thank you. If you have the love for your fellow man in your heart, you're a potential Rotarian. Actually, let's think about it. If you don't have compassion for other people, can you really be a Rotarian? Isn't that central in being a Rotarian? Now, Paul Harris gave this speech in 1933 in June. This was about 4 months after Adolf Hitler came to power. This was about 3 months after Franklin D. Roosevelt gave his famous speech during the deepest depression. The worst thing you can fear is fear itself. And Joseph Stalin, of course, was in power. Here was Paul Harris, the eternal optimist, holding up how he didn't say anything about problems. He talked about the great future. In my opinion, a true sign of great leadership is when you can hold up a vision, even in the worst of times, and have that vision become reality because you inspire people to make it a reality. And I think that's part of what was the greatness of Paul Harris. Paul Harris used to say, Rotary allows ordinary people to do extraordinary things. He also said, war is always a ghastly blunder, even the winners lose. At the convention in Chicago, I met a woman in her 70s, a retired professor from Michigan, who told me that she knew Paul Harris as a little girl. Paul Harris used to come up during the summers together with his wife Jean in the summer house there, and they spent the summers together. They used to have dinner with her parents. And he tried to convince her father to become a Rotarian. He was never successful, but she told me that little did he know that he convinced me to become a Rotarian. So in 1990, she became a Rotarian when the Rotary Club would accept her as a woman. Now, thank you. As a 12-year-old girl, she asked Paul in 1942 what he really thought about the World War. And Paul Harris said, "It's terrible. I hope it will end soon so we can bring road back to Germany and Japan. And then we must do something to make sure a war like this never happens again." In 1943, this was 1 year later, there may be a connection between this dialogue or not. Rotary sponsored a conference in London with ministers and observers from 21 governments. That group later became UNESCO. So this was the first seeds for the United Nations. Then, of course, in 1945, Rotarians played a very active role in San Francisco when the United Nations was chartered. In fact, 49 Rotarians helped draft the United Nations Charter, and many other delegates from around the world were Rotarians. They weren't there to represent Rotary, but they were Rotarians. Rotary was also one of the original 42 NGOs, which Gillian told you yesterday, at the organization conference in San Francisco. And you can see that San Francisco is playing a very important role here in Rotary history. The United States delegation invited Rotary International to appoint consultants, and there were 12 prominent Rotarians that served in that capacity and influenced the humane aspects of the charter. And the Rotarians in San Francisco helped rewrite the preamble, "We the people," rather than "we the states." So that is another influence that Rotarians in San Francisco has had on the United Nations. The U.S. government had called upon Rotary to become involved in the founding process, and the Secretary of State at the time, Edward Stettinius Jr., wrote, "The invitation to Rotary International to participate in the United Nations Conference as consultants to the United States delegation was not merely a gesture of goodwill and respect towards a great organization. It was a simple recognition of the practical part Rotary members has played and will continue to play in the development of understanding among nations. The representatives of Rotary were needed at San Francisco, and as you well know, they made a considerable contribution to the Charter itself, and particularly to the framing and provisions of the Economic and Social Council." So history has shown that San Francisco has been a very influential city to Rotary. And of course, in 1908, when the second Rotary Club was founded in the world, that was the Rotary Club of San Francisco, by this. And of course, you probably already know this, by Homer Wood. And he went ahead and also helped found Rotary clubs in Oakland, Seattle, and Los Angeles. Now, the Rotary Club of New York, which is club number 6, which I'm a member of, was also initiated from San Francisco. Clarence Wetmore initiated that, and but Paul Harris had wanted the New York club to be number 2, but New York didn't want Rotary at the time, so San Francisco came ahead. But when he heard that they were going to form a Rotary Club in New York, Paul Harris took over and actually helped initiate it and became an honorary member of our club and a member of our board for the rest of his life. Another thing which you may not know is that there was a San Franciscan Rotarian, William Stewart Morrow, who, when he moved back to Ireland, started Rotary over in Great Britain, in Ireland and in England. So that's another one. Anyway, so I think you could say that you could argue that San Francisco may be the most important city in the Rotary history as far as the expansion of Rotary goes. Thank you. Now, how do we address the future of Rotary? Where do we go? And I have some thoughts on that. I can't say I have the answers to it, but I want to throw this out because when I gave this speech in 2004, 2005, I was the chairman of Rotary History, and we celebrated Rotary, and we celebrated Rotary History. But for me to give this speech today, I think it's more relevant to use it in the context of how do we move Rotary forward in the future. Here are some of my thoughts. I'm not saying these are all the answers, but we live in a world where brand names are very important. We know McDonald's, we have all of that. But the Rotary brand is also a very important brand. Very, very powerful. When Rotarians around the world meet and they see the Rotary pin, it works as an introduction. Immediately have a recognition. I mean, I live in New York. Let's say I would want to do business in Texas or in Alabama. I come to a small city. And I don't know how positive they are to receive New Yorkers there. But what I would do is I would go and visit the local Rotary Club. Chances are I'd be sitting at the same table as the mayor of the city, the chief of police, the head judge, the bank director, and they will tell me what's going on in the city. I will have excellent introductions, and that meal that probably cost me $10 would be money well invested. I was in Hong Kong for 2 weeks in January. I visited 3 Rotary clubs. I got so many contacts, I haven't had time to even follow up on all of them. And when I'm in Sweden, I visit Rotary clubs. It's the best thing. Whenever you travel, visit a Rotary club and you'll understand how powerful Rotary really is. Now, why is it good for us to be a Rotarian? And I'm talking about now, how do we convince a non-Rotarian to become a Rotarian? Well, we the people, me, you, everybody, we're all social animals. Whether we're independent or not, we are affected by our peer groups. We're simply influenced by that. As a Rotarian, we have a very powerful peer group in our club and anywhere else in the world, because we are people that live by the 4-way test. Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerns? We live by a moral code. So being a Rotarian makes us better people simply by the company that we keep. So you take a young person, a young professional, who I'm sure would need peers, good peers. Rotary is a great solution. And today people sit at their computers on the internet. They have no idea who's at the other side of the line. They need this. And Rotary is an excellent organization to fulfill that need. In fact, we have many friends. We have more than 1 million friends in 170 countries. And together we can do a lot of things. For example, we raised $600 million for Polio Plus. What you may not have known is also that we, the Rotarians, lobbied Congress for another $1.2 billion to support Polio Plus. So we actually contributed in this way $1.8 billion. And when I spoke to Jim Lacey, who was the chairman of the foundation at the time, because I was there when they gave awards to congressmen and senators, he said the argument was that it cost the American government to immunize people in America $300 million every year. $1.2 billion not to have to immunize people here in America is saved in 4 years. He said it's a no-brainer. They did it to save money. Now, the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times have suggested that Rotary received the Nobel Peace Prize for its Polio Plus program. So there's a lot to be proud about in Rotarians. When Ed Mullen, the president representative in Rotary International, spoke, he mentioned some things that could be done to attract young Rotarians. Extreme Rotary, for example, business networking sessions, no dues, no meal Rotary clubs. We started a new Rotary club in New York, actually, that get together for a meeting, doesn't cost anything. You discuss business, and after that, whoever wants can go to the restaurant and eat. Actually, if you listen to what I said about the first Rotary meeting, Paul Harris and Sylvester Shield had dinner, went up, had a business meeting. Same concept. The first Rotary meeting operated exactly like that. We can go back to that, and that makes it more flexible. That's when you start a new Rotary club. You have to find a restaurant with a private dining room. You have to commit to X number of people coming. With this concept, you don't have to. Just find a room at a church free of charge. Easy to start a Rotary club. I sat down with Ed yesterday. We both agree that young people have a passion to serve, no matter how centric they are. I mean, I have a 19-year-old son, and I've learned that it doesn't really make any sense to argue with him because I'm never going to win anyway. But they do have a passion to serve. If we can hook into that passion. And we Rotarians are really in the business of passion because we have a passion to do something. That's really how it gets us to serve. So if we can show them something that they care about passionately, we will probably get them to join Rotary. In fact, Paul Harris said, in the battle between, and I'm going to say this to finish up my speech, In the battle between the cans and the cans in Rotary, the cans have never won a single permanent victory to my knowledge. The broad visions, the noble purposes have always won. And that's what I want us to keep on continuing having. Thank you very much.
Please be seated. Matt, thank you for the most informative Paul Harris story any of us have ever heard. The real Paul Harris.